The engagement party was already loud and golden by the time Judge Renata Caldwell turned her silver Accord onto Cypress Creek Lane in northwest Houston. She cut the engine and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at the warm glow spilling out from her sister's backyard. Strings of Edison bulbs stretched from the oak tree to the fence posts, casting everything below in the kind of buttery light that made ordinary people look like they belonged in a magazine. She could hear music, something smooth and low, and underneath it, laughter. The easy, unhurried laughter of people who had arrived on time with wrapped gifts and good intentions. Renata had arrived with neither. She had come straight from the 248th District Court of Harris County, where a sentencing hearing had dragged past 6 in the evening because the defense attorney had filed a last-minute motion that the court was obligated to consider. She hadn't eaten since noon. Her good blazer, the charcoal one she wore when she wanted to feel like herself outside of robes, had a small ink mark near the left cuff that she'd noticed only in the parking lot and had no way to fix. She had meant to stop at the Dillards on Westheimer and pick up something from the gift registry. A set of crystal glasses, maybe? Or the serving bowl Deborah had flagged. But the exit came and went, and she was already running 30 minutes behind. She grabbed her purse, straightened her posture, and walked through the side gate. The backyard smelled like jasmine and grilled shrimp, and just a hint of someone's expensive perfume. Round tables in ivory linen were scattered across the St. Augustine grass, each one lit with votive candles and topped with floral arrangements in dusty rose and cream. About 60 people moved between the tables, talking with the animated ease of a crowd that had already gotten through one glass of champagne and was working on their second. Deborah stood near the center of it all in a pale gold dress, radiant, laughing at something her fiancé Marcus was saying into her ear. She looked genuinely happy. Renata felt a swell of real warmth at the sight of it. Then their mother found her. Gloria Caldwell was a compact woman with sharp eyes, good posture, and a pearl necklace she wore to every event of social significance, regardless of the season. She moved through the party with the particular efficiency of someone who had organized the entire thing and was quietly monitoring every detail. She reached Renata near the hydrangea border and kissed her cheek before the greeting had fully formed. "You're late," Gloria said. "The docket ran long, Mama." "Deborah's been asking about you." "Then I'll go find her." "You didn't bring anything." Gloria's eyes dropped to Renata's empty hands and then came back up, carrying the full weight of the observation. "You came to your sister's engagement party empty-handed." "I came straight from court. I didn't have time to." "There's a Walgreens on every corner in this city, Renata." Renata pressed her lips together. This was not a new conversation. In the family they had grown up in, the Caldwells of 3rd Ward, later of Pearland, eventually scattered across Greater Houston, there had always been a quiet, unspoken ledger. Deborah was the one who remembered, who showed up prepared, who sent thank-you notes within 48 hours and never forgot a birthday. Renata was the one who worked, who achieved, technically, more than anyone in the family had ever achieved, but who also consistently failed to translate that achievement into the small, visible gestures that made people feel loved at parties. Gloria glanced toward the house. "The caterers brought too much out at once, and nobody's clearing the appetizer plates. Go inside and make yourself useful since you came empty-handed. Kitchen straight through." And because Renata Caldwell had been navigating this particular current her entire life, she went. The kitchen was warm and slightly chaotic. Stacked catering trays, crumpled foil sheets, a young woman in a black catering uniform who looked overwhelmed and grateful for any help. Renata set her purse on a bar stool, rolled her blazer sleeves to the elbow, and began collecting the small ceramic appetizer plates that had been stacked on the counter. She filled the left basin of the sink with hot, soapy water and got to work. It was, she had to admit, not unpleasant. There was a certain honesty in a task that asked nothing of your mind, just your hands and warm water and the satisfying clink of clean, stacked dishes. She had been at it for about 10 minutes when she heard footsteps stop behind her. She turned without thinking, the way you turn when a room changes its quality of silence. The man standing in the kitchen doorway was tall and silver-haired, somewhere in his mid-60s, wearing a well-fitted navy blazer over a simple white shirt. He held 2 empty wine glasses loosely in one hand, with the casual ease of a man who had spent his life working with his hands and still carried that comfort in his body. He had clearly intended to set the glasses down on the counter and return to the party without ceremony. He had stopped because he recognized her. Renata could see it happening, the way his eyes sharpened, the way his expression moved from the automatic blankness of a man on an errand to something more intent. His gaze moved from her face to her rolled sleeves to the soapy water and back to her face again, and she could see him deciding whether he was certain. He set the wine glasses down very carefully. He placed his right hand flat over his chest, not dramatically, not for anyone's benefit, simply the instinctive gesture of a man absorbing something that had landed somewhere real. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was steady and low. "I sat in your courtroom 3 years ago." Renata dried her hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven handle. She looked at him properly. The face was familiar in the way that certain faces from the gallery were. Not the defendants, not the attorneys, but the people in the rows behind the bar who came and sat and watched justice unfold for reasons that were deeply personal. "Theodore Hargrove," she said. It wasn't a guess. It was a retrieval. His eyebrows rose. "You remember me?" "I remember the case. Pemberton versus the state of Texas. Your business partner of 22 years was tried on 4 counts of contract fraud. You testified for the prosecution." She folded the dish towel and set it aside. "It took considerable courage, Mr. Hargrove. The defense worked hard to make you look disloyal." Theodore Hargrove stared at her for a moment, with the expression of a man who has just had something confirmed that he was not entirely sure the world was capable of confirming. Then his eyes moved, deliberately, pointedly, to the stack of plates beside the sink, to her bare forearms, to the dish soap. "Judge Caldwell," he said carefully, "are they having you wash dishes?" "My mother felt I owed the party a contribution." "You came here tonight," he said, and there was something careful and controlled building in his voice now. "After a day in court, and someone put you at the kitchen sink." "It's just dishes," Renata said. "No, ma'am," Theodore said. He was already turning toward the doorway. "It is not just dishes." She saw it in his posture before he had taken a single step, the set of his shoulders, the deliberateness of his movement. It was the posture of a man who had once sat in a courtroom and watched a woman in black robes treat him, a working man from Beaumont, like his testimony mattered and his experience was real. He had spent 3 years carrying that. He was not going to walk back into that dining room and say nothing. He paused once at the doorway and turned back to look at her. "I want everyone in that dining room," he said quietly, with the kind of certainty that does not require volume, "to know who is washing their dishes right now." Then he straightened his jacket and walked out. Renata stayed in the kitchen doorway. She heard Theodore Hargrove pick up a dinner knife and tap it twice against a champagne flute. The sound cut cleanly through the music and the conversation, and the room performed that particular social reflex, the gradual, rippling hush that moves through a crowd when someone with weight in their bearing signals that they have something to say. "Most of you don't know me well yet," Theodore began. His voice carried without effort. "I'm Marcus's father. I was born in Beaumont. I work in dirt and rock, and I am not a man who makes speeches. So I'll make this short, and I will make it plain." From the doorway, Renata could see pieces of the room. Marcus standing near the bar, his expression shifting from curious to attentive. Deborah turning from a cluster of bridesmaids, gold dress catching the candlelight, Gloria Caldwell near the dessert table with her hands folded and her face carefully arranged into the neutral expression she deployed when she was processing something she hadn't anticipated. 3 years ago, Theodore said, I sat in the 248th District Court of Harris County during one of the harder seasons of my life. I had to testify against a man I had worked alongside for more than 2 decades. I was scared. I was ashamed, though I had nothing to be ashamed of. And the judge who presided over that courtroom treated me like a man whose words had value, like the truth I was telling mattered. She was patient, and she was precise, and she was fair in a way that I did not take for granted then and do not take for granted now. He paused. That judge is in your kitchen right now washing dishes because she arrived tonight without a gift after a full day on the bench, and someone decided she needed to make herself useful. The room was profoundly quiet. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. Her name is the Honorable Renata Caldwell. She has given years of her life to justice in this city. And I think, before we raise another glass tonight to celebrate love and family, this room ought to know her name. He raised his own glass toward the kitchen doorway. Renata didn't move for a moment. Then she stepped fully into the dining room, dish towel still in hand, sleeves still rolled, ink mark still on her cuff. The applause began the way real applause begins, not on cue, not politely, but because people genuinely felt something and needed somewhere to put it. Deborah crossed the room and didn't say a word. She simply put both arms around her sister and held on. It was the hug of a woman who understood, maybe for the first time with her whole chest, what her sister's life actually looked like from the inside. The long hours, the invisible weight, the years of showing up to things exhausted and trying anyway. Marcus shook Renata's hand with both of his and said he hoped she would consider herself family already. Later, after the guests had thinned and the caterers were loading their van and the Edison bulbs were still glowing gold over a quieter yard, Renata and her mother sat together on the back porch steps. Gloria held a glass of sweet tea against her knee. She was uncharacteristically still. I didn't know that man had ever met you, Gloria said finally. You didn't need to know, Mama. Renata's voice was gentle. That was never the point. Gloria looked at her eldest daughter for a long, recalibrating moment. Not with guilt, exactly. Gloria Caldwell was not easily moved to guilt, but with something more honest than usual. No, she said quietly. I suppose it wasn't. They sat there together until the last candle on the last table finally went out on its own. A lesson worth keeping. Never judge a person by what they arrived without. The most accomplished people in any room are often the quietest ones, and dignity doesn't disappear just because someone handed them a dish towel. Treat every person with respect before you know their story, because you almost never know their story.